Oh, hi! You know what? Last time we did comic tropes, it was Christmas themed, but that comic was garbage. I thought, let's do another Christmas themed one, but with a fun, albeit bonkers, Christmas issue. I'm talking about Marvel 2-in-1 number 8. In this issue, The Thing teams up with Ghost Rider to meet the new Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's pretty bonkers. We're talking about a Jewish superhero and a Satanic superhero who are out to meet the new Jesus. So, without further ado, let's go over the tropes that you could expect to find in any given issue of Marvel 2-in-1. Fighting another hero before teaming up. Team-ups with obscure heroes. Obscure villains. Thing catchphrases including, "What a revolting development," "Aunt Petunia's favorite nephew," "The ever-loving blue-eyed thing," "It's clobbering time." Tropes about the Thing such as being ambiguously Jewish, acting cranky, calling superheroes by nicknames, squabbling with or mentioning the Yancey Street Gang. Writer Steve Gerber's tropes such as deconstructing superheroes, focusing on weird characters, pages with a wall of text. Without any further ado, let's get into the story. It's Christmas Eve, 1974. That doesn't date things at all. And Ghost Rider is driving along in his skull cycle throughout Arizona at night when all of a sudden he bumps into the three wise men. If there's any Marvel character that counts as weird, Ghost Rider certainly has to count. Weird characters, that's a trope. Let's hang that up on the tree. Ah, beautiful. Ghost Rider is absolutely stunned to see three wise men on camels. And for some reason, he doesn't just assume that these people are reenactors or cosplayers. He just says, "Oh my God, it's the three wise men from biblical times." Beyond that, it might seem odd to you to see the way Ghost Rider speaks. For instance, when he addresses one of the wise men, he says, "I'm as human as you seem to be, old-timer, but suppose you tell me what course." Now the reason for that is at this point in time, Johnny Blaze, he's the stunt cyclist who sold his soul to the devil to become Ghost Rider. Now, he had actually taken control of the Ghost Rider powers, and he'd actually done this literally with the help of Jesus. Now, in the comics, he called him a friend, but they drew him like Jesus, and it was very obviously Jesus. And Jesus literally told Satan, like, "Hey, start leaving Johnny Blaze alone." So anyway, he's in full control. He is Johnny Blaze even when he looks like Ghost Rider. He's got his personality intact. It'd be like Bruce Banner being in control of the Hulk. This is a little on the nose, but one of the wise men says, "We three kings are following yonder star, seeking the child of the prophecy." And Ghost Rider thinks, "Kings? Star? Child? Prophecy?" I'm surprised he didn't add "the." He seems very confused about all these ideas. As he's confused, one of these kings says, "Hey, you know what? We've got plenty of frankincense and myrrh to give to the prophesied child. Do you want to come along with us and give some of it?" Now, I gotta say, this isn't a trope about comics or anything, but myrrh and frankincense are terrible gifts for a baby. They're essentially both resins that you could make from tree branches. You could turn it into oils that would smell good as a perfume. They could be used as a type of ointment to relieve certain pains. Myrrh you could even mix with wine to make it taste a little different. These are all things that a baby has no need for, no interest in at all. Terrible gifts. Terrible. He's witnessing three wise men heading for a star, and he decides he's impatient and he's going to use his skull cycle to scout on up ahead. He's not going to follow along with these guys. He's going to see what's going on as fast as possible. Now we cut to the Baxter Building in New York City, where Reed Richards is bossing around the Thing, telling him how exactly to lay out his new telescope lens. Mr. Fantastic is always sort of a condescending asshole to his supposed best friend, sort of treating him like the janitor more than anything else. Look at what he says. "Ben, please, be careful. That's a precision instrument you're carrying. The lens arrangement is easily upset." The Thing has been helping you with science experiments forever. I think he knows to be careful, and if you've got a better way to lift this gigantic telescope that you've made, why don't you call up the Hulk or something? You're so lucky to have a friend like this helping you on Christmas Eve. We quickly come across two tropes right off the bat. The Thing calls Mr. Fantastic by a nickname, and he acts cranky. I mean, that's his personality. He's irascible. It kind of makes him lovable. Specifically, he says, "Newsflash, Stretch, your super-duper telescope ain't the only thing getting upset around here. It's Christmas, Reed. Susie's having a party downstairs. Your little son is waiting for his daddy." But of course, Mr. Fantastic is like, "No, I've got to find this new star with my massive telescope." I don't get why he needs such a big telescope. Some genius. Telescopes don't have to necessarily be that big. I mean, who knows where this star is, so I'll give it to him. Maybe it's far off in some distant galaxy. But anyway, there is a new star. It's what the wise men were following. Reed Richards has also noticed it. The Thing helps him put the telescope in place and then goes like, "I'm going to the party." The rest of the Fantastic Four and their friends are all decking the trees and having Christmas treats. It's Christmas Eve, it's family. But one of the characters there was one of the weirdest characters, and that is Wondar. Basically, if you know the Thundercats, he's sort of got Lion-O's story. He also sort of has Superman's origin. Basically, Wondar's parents were worried that their planet was going to explode, and they sent him to Earth. When he crashed, he kept aging. So he's something like a 20-year-old body, but with the mind of a child. So he was the best friend of one of the Fantastic Four's kids. They only had one kid right now, Franklin. So Wondar and Franklin would hang out. Way later, he basically evolved into a character called the Aquarian, which was literally a Jesus Christ allegory. So I guess that this writer, Steve Gerber, was a little bit religious because he would put in very overt Jesus-y things in a lot of his comics. Thing explains that Mr. Fantastic won't be down for a while and they should go ahead and light up the tree. I guess that's one of their traditions. They light up the tree and apparently Mr. Fantastic really lit it up. Everyone is just like, "Whoa, that's too weird!" And Thing can't stop laughing. I don't know how funny that is. I mean, I could cover this tree in about 20 more lights, and it wouldn't be that weird, would it? We got Cranky and nicknames. Thing had a nickname for everybody he knew. Ghost Rider is zipping along following that star, and oh boy, his dialogue here. Well, let's just read it. "Reckon I should have expected this. Maybe I would have if I'd believed those 3 camel jockeys." Yeah, he calls those kings on camels camel jockeys. That's a bit insensitive, we'll say, by today's standards. 1974, I guess nobody knew any better. Doesn't hold up so well. Now, what he should be coming across, apparently, is an Indian or Native American reservation out there in Arizona. Instead, he comes across what he calls as a city from biblical times, which is actually a pretty large span when you think about how much the Bible covers. We're talking at least hundreds of years, if not thousands. So he's not being very specific there, is he? But you know what? He's powered by Satan, so maybe we'll forgive him if he doesn't know his Bible too well. He's carnival folk, isn't he? In fact, he drives into the town and he's stunned when the people there aren't Semitic, as he calls it. Instead, they're Native Americans. So yeah, this is already getting pretty bizarro. Let's keep reading to try to get some sort of context of what's happening here. I also get a kick out of this line by Ghost Rider. He's wondering what he's just seen, and he wonders if he just drove through a cloud of loco weed and he's hallucinating. Does that mean that Ghost Rider is susceptible to smells? He's a skull face. I mean, I guess if he can hear and see, it stands to reason that somehow he can smell, even though he doesn't have a nose. Ghost Rider wonders if he got high. Ghost Rider goes to the inn, and they literally turn him away and say, "Nah, the only place you can stay is over in that manger." And even though he doesn't seem to know his Bible too well, even Ghost Rider is putting together what's going on here. He's like, this sounds a little familiar. And then he's confronted by a mysterious figure. Who could it be? The guy all in shadow all of a sudden conjures up a whirlwind and throws Ghost Rider, looks like dozens of miles outside of the city. Ghost Rider isn't hurt by this. But then he's worried about his skull cycle falling on top of him. And in fact, he talks about how the skull cycle is impervious to damage, but he isn't. That's kind of weird because Ghost Rider always has been impervious to damage, and he just got thrown out of a city, and he's fine. Ghost Rider says, "This is crazy. Nobody can do what he just did." Right, nobody except for Storm, Doctor Strange, any telekinetic on the X-Men. You know, come to think of it, there's probably dozens of people that could do that. But whatever, you know, maybe he drove through a cloud of loco weed. Back at the Baxter Building, Mr. Fantastic has used the telescope to figure out that the star is pointing to an Indian reservation in Arizona. Things get really weird here. First of all, if you're driving from Arizona and you saw the North Star and it seemed to be pointing in a certain direction, fine. But if you were in New York, that wouldn't mean that the star is in the middle of our country pointing straight down. That's not how stars work. It's so far in the sky. It's either to the east or to the west. It isn't just straight up pointing straight down. This is not how stars work. And Reed Richards doesn't find that part weird. He's just like, oh, we should go investigate, even though it's Christmas Eve. They also get a little lazy about their own history because Mr. Fantastic says that it's the tribe of their friend, Wyatt Wingfoot. He calls it the Conahoe Indian Reservation. I hate to be a stickler, but Wyatt Wingfoot was actually a prominent supporting character in Fantastic Four for a long time, and he was established as being from the Kiwazi tribe, also fictional, in Oklahoma. So it's kind of weird that they feel comfortable just totally attributing him to a different tribe in a different state. That feels like something an editor should have caught. But whatever, it's in his tribe, and even though Wyatt Wingfoot is hanging out with them, they don't think like, hey Wyatt, do you want to come with us and see what's up? No, instead Mr. Fantastic thinks he'll investigate on his own. Fortunately, Thing steps in and says, no, you know what, you've got your family. Why don't you go spend Christmas with your family? I'll go explore, because this is my comic book. Okay, he didn't say that, but he offers to go investigate. And you know what? This makes a little bit of sense, because Thing was always sort of ambiguously Jewish until the 2000s, when he canonically was called Jewish. But his name was Benjamin Jacob Grimm. He was created by two Jewish people, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And he even sort of looks like a golem, you know, from Jewish mythology. So it was always implied that he was Jewish. So yeah, he'd probably actually be the only one out of the whole family that would be willing to be like, no, you know what, you guys celebrate your holiday. I'll go investigate this superhero problem. Being Jewish. Beautiful. Thing takes one of the Fantastic Four's jets, heads over to Arizona, and he thinks he sees a flare, but it's actually Ghost Rider's head. Now things are a little weird here because he lands. They don't have any confusion. They don't fight. They subvert that trope. But Thing recognizes Ghost Rider as Johnny Blaze, not as Ghost Rider. He's like, oh yeah, aren't you Johnny Blaze, that, you know, Evel Knievel knockoff stunt cyclist? He's like, yep, that's me. Maybe it's a super unique jacket. They talk and decide that they both need to go back into town and investigate. How will they do that? Why, they'll go in disguise this time. So basically, Ghost Rider uses his powers to create a flame wall, and they steal the clothes from those three kings. They essentially knock out the good guys to disguise themselves and get in. And you know what? Look at this panel of Thing and Ghost Rider in disguise. Oh my god, that makes the whole comic worth it. That's utterly bonkers. I don't know why Ghost Rider's flame skull doesn't burn things, but it's totally doused in this instance. Like, he's just wearing a dress. He just looks like an old lady skeleton. And somehow people don't notice Thing, even though he's humongous. They really don't even have to investigate too long. They come across basically Mary and Joseph giving birth to a baby that's essentially Jesus Christ, and instantly the supervillain finally reveals himself. He's Miracle Man. Who is Miracle Man? Well, Miracle Man was, first of all, an obscure villain, so that's a trope right there. Steve Gerber loved using obscure villains. Miracle Man was actually a very early Fantastic Four villain. He appeared all the way back in issue 3 in the early 60s. Originally, he was just a stage magician that could hypnotize people and trick them. But later, he ended up literally getting powers that could change matter, and he learned it all from some sacred old men in Wyatt Wingfoot's Indian tribe. They were called the Silent Ones. Over the years, Miracle Man would basically get taken captive by the Silent Ones and mind wiped, and then he would remember who he is and break free. But he's crazy because he can basically do almost anything. There was actually another Miracle Man right around this time. He was printed over in the UK. But his original name was actually Marvel Man, and they couldn't call him Marvel Man when those stories were printed here in America because Marvel owned the rights to that name. They couldn't call him Marvel Man, so they called him Miracle Man, even though Marvel actually owns a character named Miracle Man. But this character was actually invented back in the 50s, and he was sort of a knockoff of Captain Shazam. He was a kid that could magically shout a word and become Marvel Man or Miracle Man, whatever you want to call him, an adult superhero. And by the 70s and 80s, he was sort of written by all these different amazing writers and went through some amazing stories that deconstructed superhero ideas. You know what? We'll have to do a comic tropes on that someday, Miracle Man. Let's put a pin in that for now and get back to this bonkers story. Miracle Man turns some animals that are in the barn into monsters. Thing and Ghost Rider have a fairly generic fight with them, and then Miracle Man starts monologuing about his evil villain plan. This is crazy. He basically argues that if he could recreate the birth of Jesus, that makes him God. Except he doesn't seem to understand that all he's doing is sort of hypnotizing people and creating illusions. For instance, here's a comparison. When Civil War reenactors reenact the battles, that doesn't mean the Civil War is literally happening again and it can have a different outcome than the one we know. The South isn't going to actually win just because some reenactors decided that they wanted that to happen. But anyway, that's his plan. I don't know why it would work. Also, if he can create this sort of Messiah child being born and create monsters, why not skip all that and just create monsters and rule the world? It seems like you already have a lot of power. For some reason, when he sees Ghost Rider pretends to be a demon and says like, I'm going to take your powers. And that shakes his confidence and causes his illusions to start to vanish. Apparently his powers must be fueled by his own confidence. I don't know. None of this is explained. Miracle Man realizes that for whatever reason his plan is foiled and he just sets fire to the whole town and tries to escape. Thing and Ghost Rider start evacuating the innocent people, and then Ghost Rider's like, look, I can go into the fire and not get hurt. I won't explain how that works, but I can do that. You go stop Miracle Man. And Thing is like, all right, if you say so, pal, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to go stop Miracle Man. I don't know. You sure you won't get burned? It's like this guy has a flaming skull. Yeah, I think he's invulnerable to flame. Thing catches up to Miracle Man, who's laughing and saying he can just do this whole thing again next year. So I guess it has to happen on Christmas Eve. But any biblical scholar will tell you that Christmas is not literally the date that Jesus would have been born. Who knows if he existed or not? I don't. I'm not that big of a literary scholar. But we know that Christianity moved the birth of Christ to celebrate that holiday onto the winter solstice because it was an existing super popular pagan holiday, Yule. Anyway, we don't need to get too far into all of that, but it is kind of funny that his whole plan hinges on it needing to take place on Christmas Eve specifically. Thing gets in a really weird insult here that I absolutely love. Thing says, "Fella, you're gonna look more like Miracle Margarine when I get done with you." I have to look that up. Was Miracle Margarine a real brand? If it isn't, that's an even better insult. Miracle Man then just goes, "Oh, by the way, I can be just as strong as you, Thing," and he punches him. But Thing throws sand in his face, and Miracle Man's like, "I can't see," and his powers, I guess, turn off. Thing shouts his catchphrase, "It's clobbering time," and knocks him out. I wonder if there's such a thing as an issue with the Thing where he fights and doesn't say it's clobbering time. That would be interesting to find out. As soon as Miracle Man is knocked out, the town reverts to the tribal land that it's supposed to be. And then all of a sudden, those silent ones, that ancient Kiwazi tribe, they pop up and they said, "Yeah, you know what? Miracle Man escaped from us and he turned us into those three kings. So, but anyway, we're back to normal and we'll take it from here." Things like, "Yeah, okay, you failed last time, but go for it." So one thing didn't disappear when Miracle Man went unconscious. That baby. Nobody was pregnant with that baby, but the tribe is just like, he'll be a ward of the tribe. He's some sort of a miracle baby. He's literally some sort of new Jesus Christ figure. It's not explained how that came to be, and no one ever followed up with it. There's just a new Jesus Christ. Ghost Rider casually says, "Adios, folks," and takes off. Finally, there's a tease for the next issue. It says, "Kung Fu action as you've never seen it before and may never want to see again. It's the Thing in Iron Fist." Well, I don't know why I wouldn't want to see something like that. That sounds pretty awesome. But guess what? The next issue is Thor. So that just didn't happen. Just so that you know, in this Die Hard sweatshirt, Christmas hat, and the actual fire going, I've been boiling this episode. But you know what? It's over. Next week, I'm going to take a look back at the year of 2016. I mean, it's going to be a new year. It's going to be 2017. So I'm going to take a look back at the best-selling comic of 2016. Come back next week. Let's see what it is.